week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, and I'm happy to be back this week feeling healthy. I'm going to let the American one jump into the room. Before he gets here, I'm going to kick it over first to Spartan Grown. Welcome back.
Thanks, Jax. Good to be back. Good to see everybody. I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me mostly on Instagram, and it's going to be Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces. And if you can't, or if you're having problems getting a hold of me there, I always have my email available. There's our notification for our show. Our email available, which is spartangrown@gmail.com. And you can just email me there for any growing questions. I'll try to help you out.
Good stuff, and Happy New Year to everyone. And hopefully we all made it through the holidays and hopefully had a good time there. Next up, we got Brandon Rust.
What's going on? Glad to be here. Happy New Year, everybody. It's going to be a fantastic year for us out here in Oklahoma. Yeah, it's always a good time. Thanks for having me here. I think we're going to chop it up, nerd out on some weed, and just chop it up. If anybody needs microbes or humate fertilizers, amendments, you can check out the website, bokashiearthworks.com. And then if you guys have any questions out there about any of the products or about growing, feel free to DM me. I try to get back to as many people as I can.
Good stuff. Happy to have you back. Next up, and last currently with us, the American one.
Hello, Jack, Spartan, Brandon. Happy New Year to you, and Happy New Year to everyone in chat. I'm the American one, and I'm glad to be here, and I hope everyone had a great start to the new year.
We're happy to have you back. And I will say that while you were introducing yourself, we have another panelist who has joined us. It looks like they're still jumping into the call right now, but I'll go ahead and introduce next Matthew Gates. Maybe they're not with us yet, but we do have Matthew joining us here shortly. And yeah, just want to say Happy New Year again to everybody. I got this little arc lighter type thing for Christmas for my in-law. It's just a single little beam there. You can hear it through the mic or whatever. But I've even used this to smoke bowls and stuff. So I'm gonna toast up a little joint while Matthew is hopefully able to hear me now and goes ahead and introduces himself.
Hey everyone, this is Matthew Gates. Trying to get this microphone to work. So
it was just a dramatic pause. I thought that's all it was.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I can be dramatic sometimes. This is not it. So yeah, for those who know already, is Matthew Gates, Integrated Pest Management Specialist. Excited to be here. I'm curious to know what we'll be talking about today. And of course, shout out to the chat.
I think we might be taking some chat questions because I didn't send any science out. I was, getting over the sickness. Lady Greenstock and I are both testing negative now and feeling better, but it definitely threw us off. My family, all their flights got canceled, so didn't end up linking up with any of them for the holidays or anything. But that all aside, I'm about to spark up a joint, and I have a question for Brandon Rust because this is a strain that I didn't include in 50 Strains of Green because there's so much misinformation and so many conflicting stories about the lineage of it. And I know that your dog was actually named after the strain, or RIP, Romulan, the strain. So what are your thoughts on Romulan? What do you think it is? And
that's a good one. Yeah, man, Romulan is something that I haven't personally grown in a really long time. It was in the OGs, the guys that taught me how to grow weed. It was in their staple when I came on board. And it was just a beautiful plant. It was really vigorous. It had a really nice pine kind of nose to it, not super piney, but it was really frosty, and it was kind of like yellowish. Like the color of it was, I distinctly remember it being very bright, like green, and like almost kind of, like the white of the trichomes and the bright green kind of gave it like almost a yellowish kind of look to it. But as far as I know, the cut that we had, it came from Amsterdam. A friend of ours he brought it back from Amsterdam in like 1998 or something like that.
I know that this is a dated kind of reference, I guess. A lot of people don't like this anymore as a metric, but as far as like indica, sativa, growth morphology, and then like as far as like high being maybe uplifting or sedating or maybe more in the middle, how would you describe the effects and then the growth of the plant?
It was a broadleaf dominant, kind of more shorter plant. It was really heavy. It was sedative. It wasn't what people would consider a sativa or like an uplifting varietal.
I'd say that this is definitely like a woodier pine, maybe like a loamy pine, like not quite
Yes,
as dank as
yes,
soil, but earthy. Someone
yeah,
might describe this as.
definitely. I can understand what when you say like the woody, you get that earthy wood in there. But yeah, it's been so long, man. It's been 19 years.
It's wild to think. Tao, I know you've been
I
growing
have
since
a
around then. What are your thoughts and experiences with the Romulan, or
yeah. I was
just
just gonna
generally?
say I have a seeds labeled Romberry that I grew out that someone gifted me in 2018, I think it was, and I grew them out. And shit's killer. It's really weak on the yields and the buds, and it takes like at least 10 weeks to even look all right. I probably should have let it go longer, but the high I get is not sedative at all. It's freaking uh it's uppity. Maybe it might be because it was taken down a little early, but I get fucked up off the shit. Like the
Well, it
high is
depends.
totally different than like a bunch of the other highs I get. I get like stupid, confused. You get the wah wah wah. Like if you stand up quick, you're gonna be like holding on to something. But yeah, but it's a weak yielder and flimsy buds. But I love the shit.
As far as the blueberry or berry, I think it's Romulan blueberry. Um,
Yeah,
Blueberry
so
Romulan.
I would guess that the blueberry might
blueberry is
be
coming
one of the
through. But
blueberry sativa, like deeper
yeah,
short headed blueberry sativa, and then Como Creations did a blueberry sativa IBL. And a lot of people did some breeding with that stuff. So I wonder if it would be more on the uplifting side of the blueberry. And because a lot of the blueberry stuff that I see traditionally is more like sedating, but there are those blueberries that are super uplifting. And
yep,
it being a longer finisher and not like the I don't know if you were saying it was not the most, it's a different kind of high. It sounds kind of like it's pretty potent with the wah-wahs and all that other stuff. But
yeah.
yeah, maybe more uplifting. Maybe it's just from the genetics.
Yeah, I wouldn't say uplifting, but it definitely doesn't put you down and out. It's like yeah, and I'm gonna hit it. I'm hitting it right now. It got hit with the cheesequake pollen, so I'm gonna see what that does because it is really flimsy. It's
Well,
not flimsy. It just doesn't make big buds. That's all. It's a good plant, sturdy plant, just doesn't make big buds. Yeah,
if it's anything like Amy with the cheesequake male, that is a stout, stocky, heavy yielding plant that is extremely cheesy. Like the pheno I selected was couldn't have been cheesier after it finished curing, and it was a pretty strong grower. I mean, had no issues, and flimsy is like the exact opposite of the description I would give of its morphology for sure.
yeah. That Amy makes some like rock buds.
I've got some. I just flipped to flower today, and I'm popping seeds tonight. Um, Shout out to Spartan Grown. He sent me some Vortex F2. I'm gonna pop some of those. I think I might pop some of Brandon's Blacklight Cross. I think he might have sent Blacklight F2 or Limelight Cross. I can't remember. I made a post on it on my Instagram recently. And then I'm also going to shout out to I think it's Zion Lion NorCal, who sent me Zest OG crossed to Jack the Ripper and Jack the Ripper crossed or Pineapple Fields crossed to Jack the Ripper male. So doing a little bit more of like an uplifting hunt. I tried to do a sedating hunt and then had poor results with my soil and everything starting off. And then I just switched back to Velvet Punch to find see if the soil I was starting with was going to work out well. And so I'm finishing up that Velvet Punch right now. And I'm going to switch up to some more uplifting stuff for the springtime. But Matthew Gates is back with us now, and I see his background. It looks like his computer and everything is maybe sorted out some of the issues. Hopefully we can hear you. And welcome back, Matthew Gates.
Yeah, there should be no issues.
All right. Well, we're happy to have you back. And if you have any IPM topics come up, or if we have any questions from the chat about IPM, make sure to tag at Sync Angel or you're at
Zentanol.
Zentanol on YouTube actually. And if you want to generally ask a question, tag at Cheap Home Grow so I could see it, and then I'll copy and paste it into our Zoom chat, and maybe we'll get to it in a little bit. So we are just talking a little bit about what I have been popping, I guess. Got some of Spartan and Brandon's gear here coming up. I just flipped some Velvet Punch F3s to flower. And unlike the last run of Velvet Punch F3 I did, which was a stress test run before I sent them out to my testers, this run I've been absolutely just crushing it, like on all cylinders, like watering it perfect time, perfect amount of light. And it's amazing how fast you can get the plants to grow when you're giving it the proper amount of water, proper amount of light, proper temperature, proper humidity. And like, shout out to Brandon. I'm giving Micro Plus pretty often. And I also will, when they were in veg, if I'd watered and they were taking kind of like a couple days to dry up, I would foliar with the amino N plus to get them a little extra nutrient in that time as well. And I noticed if the RH dropped, I'd foliar a little amino N plus as well. And the plants have just been cranking. Like I was planning to, I thought it was going to be another week, maybe 2 before I flipped, but they filled out the tent even quicker. I probably should have flipped them even sooner, but I got everything all lined up, and it's going to be exciting to see because I know they were vigorous even during the stress testing. So I can only imagine while everything's all dialed in, they're going to be pretty stretchy. So looking forward to see what comes from that. And I guess I'll pass it to Spartan Grown and ask what's going on in your garden and how you're doing in this new year.
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I've popped a lot of my genetics that I've been fucking with that Vortex. So I've got the Vortex F2s, or Project V, I'm calling it, going. I've got, and then I popped 2 other. I popped the Snow Devil, which is the Snow King cross the Vortex, and then the Spartan Puke, which is the Donnie cross the Vortex. And I'm gonna run those. My hopes, honestly, with these is to replace my keeper strains. So if the Donnie Cross is better than my Donnie Burger, I'll fucking replace it. If the, if the Snow Cane Cross is better than Snow Cane, I'll replace it. And there's no need to keep that original mother plant, because if I believe it is better, then why would I keep it? So I'm kind of moving in that direction. So we'll see.
It's nice when you make your own seeds because then you can pop a bunch and then you can pick towards, I know that you have plant count and stuff, but like
Yeah,
over time, if you pop just like 3 every single run or something like that, and then
that's
you
what I'm
just,
gonna do. Yeah, just
yeah,
pop a couple at a time and then just run them up against what I've already got, what I'm already holding, and just have the very best one.
then you'll start to see like, does it lean more towards mom or is it getting some influence from the dad? What is the influence from the dad? Because that's
I
actually
was
pretty
already
hard to
really
parse out.
interested in what I was looking at. So I got the Project V, which is just Vortex, right? So, and I'm looking at the leaf morphology of right now. I mean, they're seedlings, so they only have 3 blades on the leaf. And it was interesting to me how the middle blade is more pronounced than the other 2, but the middle blade is like really fat in the middle on the crosses, but on the Vortex times Vortex, it's not. So the Vortex on Vortex is still very, if you had to look at just the leaf, and this is very early on, I know, but if you look at just the leaf, you think, oh, that's sativa leaning right there. But if you look at the 2 crosses, the one to Snow Cane and the one to Donnie, you would think it was leaning more indica. So I thought that was interesting already, just watching them.
It's cool to notice that kind of stuff early on and then trace and track how it goes throughout the rest of the veg, especially in the flower. And it would make sense with the lineages, sort of, that you'd see more of a narrow leaf in the Vortex, the F2, than Donnie Burger, which is pretty heavy, like indica hybrid, I would say. Like there's the Larry OG F8 and then a bunch of GMO, which I would say, there's hybrid because GMO is such a long finisher. But I'm trying to think of I feel like GMO's leaf is pretty average. It's not like super narrow or super broad.
No, I think, yeah, it's kind of like in the middle now that I'm thinking about it. But what surprised me is Snow King is kind of a sativa, and I hit that with Vortex, and the leaves the leaves actually look almost identical to the Donnie cross, which I was like, wow. It was it was weird to me how the crosses look similar, super similar. Like I couldn't tell them apart if they weren't labeled. But but the vortex is standing out still.
What are we looking at here, Tao? You're on mute.
Yeah, I figured I'd show you what's happening here. I got those two are the Autoflowers still going. And the one is really frosty. I'm really impressed with this. If I could get it to focus.
Who are these from?
This is Cassie Auto from Gem Seeker Genetics that Marcus Green Thumb gifted me.
Shout out to him.
And-
If there was like a Gromy of the year of 2022, that dude is just like,
Yeah, he really came out and started hanging out with everyone. That's very
he's
cool. of
just a
him.
great. I haven't met him in person yet, but like great vibes in the DMs and super friendly. Generally,
He works for Bokashi Earthworks.
Yeah,
Hell
he's
yeah,
a great
man.
guy. So that's the Cassie Auto. And then this one over here is Gelato 41 Auto that I see he gifted me. And this one seems like it's got a lot more white hair still kicking. It's got more time to go, but they're both filling in impressively for what people tell me autos don't go. These
Yeah,
are
I
going.
mean,
So
everybody's seen the auto that's like the size of one of those buds. So this
Okay.
is like a successful, healthy plant. It's always nice when you get an opportunity to grow
I
a
mean, this thing is
plant that
really
looks like a regular plant.
white with frost, man. I'm impressed.
Did
And
you
then,
top
yeah,
these like once or
I
twice?
topped them once, and I chopped off the couple of the lower nodes, and then this is the next set that's going into a ton here. I got four buckets with one has 3 plants, one has three have two plants in them. So yeah,
I just remembered I got to send you some F3 Velvet Punch. I still haven't sent those to you.
so yeah, that's what's happening over here. If I get so this I got to move these in after the show tonight into a ton.
These are
But
looking
yeah,
nice. This is a nice even canopy.
Oh yeah, this is these are all healthy, happy right here. They're pretty big too. I'm gonna take off some leaves and some branches, but yeah, I
The
want to show
autos-
off the autos mostly. Yeah,
With the topping, they kind of broke that apical dominance. So like if you didn't say that those were autos when you panned over to them, I
Right.
actually probably wouldn't have guessed. Like if
If
you
you
see
can
an
see-
untopped auto where it's just that main apical bud and then like a few way lower, you can just look at it and be like, oh, that's an autoflower. Like with
Yeah,
pretty good
I
certainty.
want to shout out Smart Poker. He told me like, don't be afraid to top it and do all the stuff. And then I pulled down the branches. You can see with to spread them out.
They look
So
good.
yeah, they do look good. I can't wait to try them.
It's nice when you can have your own previous preconceived notions kind of shattered and changed because the breeding has gotten better. I mean, they're just literally better than they were 10 years ago. And you and many others are proof. I mean, I've seen lots of people grow really fire autos that they're extremely happy with. And it's being sold in the commercial market here in California and probably many other places as well. So they definitely have found their place. And it's cool to see because for a long time they were not a viable option commercially. The smoke was just too different from what people are used to from photo periods. But now they're like frosty and terpy and seen a lot of stuff testing. Now the THC is everything, but at 25%, which is respectable with a few percent terps. And, most people that are non-growers, if you just hand them the buds and have them smell them, smoke them, a lot of people aren't going to be like, is that an autoflower? So it, most people don't even know, I guess, if they don't grow. But yeah, definitely the respect I think is being earned by many with the autoflowers. I've seen Buddy Kilowatt, a regular listener out here in San Diego area. He grew a bunch of really big, beautiful autos. Boom Farms up in Canada grew a bunch of big, beautiful autos. So it's no longer like the popsicle stick height single bud. That's like 7 grams or whatever. So I've seen a lot of people get those, unfortunately.
The first time I attempted the autos, though, that's what happened to me because you have to make sure you stay on top of them with the uplanting because I left them in the 1 gallons too long and they flowered when I wasn't even looking. And they were only, like you're saying, an eighth or a quarter bud when they were done. So yeah, but if you do it right, apparently they'll do right. Yeah.
That was the thing. A lot of people get recommended them as beginner growers or to beginner growers, and they make a lot of the most mistakes. They're just learning. They might not even have the full nutrient line or the right lighting or the right environmental controls. So they make a ton of mistakes early on, and then they're screwed because the autoflowers just going off. Or with a photo, you can make a lot of mistakes in veg, and you can just rip those leaves off. New leaves come out, and if they still have issues, then you got to do some correcting. But as a new grower, photo periods I think are much more forgiving. You can top them a bunch of times. You can train them to your space. So I always kind of get a little confused about that. And I'm not anti-auto. I'm open-minded to everything. I think everything has its place. But for new growers, I see it recommended so commonly online. And a lot of new growers only growing autos. Like, oh, like I'm going to grow this because they're afraid of light leaks or something else. And it's just interesting to see that new growers are probably the most commonly growing autoflowers, where a lot of the experienced growers are growing photoperiods. And I think both could probably benefit from trying the other one. I still haven't grown an auto myself yet, so
Do you really think that autoflower is truly more popular with most new growers? Over 50%?
I would say 90%. Looking at seed sales,
Really?
seed banks, yeah.
Well, what I would say to
Feminized
that
specifically.
though, okay.
Feminized
Well,
and autoflower seeds are probably top sellers for seed banks.
I was just gonna say that, in a lot of ways, it sort of makes sense that most plants are autoflower in that way, right? So it kind of I sort of kind of mirrors the way that most plants that people encounter sort of grow. Sort of it might not mean anything. Might not be any causal effect there, but I just think it's interesting to point that out.
I was
Maybe
just gonna
we
say,
should
it's
not be so
interesting, though.
surprised.
I've never put that together, but you're right. That's exactly what most people are used to anyway. Grabbing a seed.
I knew they were popular, but yeah, I just I guess maybe I'm exposed more to people who are growing more photo periods generally. But yeah, I certainly don't think there's anything wrong with it either. I have to echo that sentiment as well.
I'll say this. I know a lot of cannabis growers. Cannabis is the first plant that they've grown ever. Like they might have done stuff as a kid. They might have done like stuff in school. But as far as growing a garden, the first thing, and I'm going to raise my hand for this myself, cannabis taught me how to grow food and plants and other things. I learned how to grow cannabis before I learned how to grow any other plant. So it was the first plant that I learned, and everything else to me, I'm like, oh, that's kind of like cannabis, And so that's always my reference point. But for a lot of people, it's the other way around. They're like trying to treat it like a tomato or whatever, orange, citrus tree, whatever they've got experience growing. And my cat's trying to attack me for my joint. But yeah, I would say the seed banks, if you just browse through and look at like the selections and what's pushed on the first page, a lot of the stuff is feminized autoflower. And I do agree, it makes a lot of sense. But a lot of
Now,
people.
I'm curious, do you think there's a reason for that? I'm sure there's multiple, but what do you think are I'm curious to get the panel's
It
opinion
sells
about
every time because like you
But
have to
why?
buy another, you can't keep a cut. If I buy a
see,
photo
yeah,
period,
that's what I was gonna say too.
I
Right.
can keep a clone. If I buy a pack of autos, maybe a 3-pack, right? A lot of people buy 3 or 5-pack just because it's the cheapest option. And so they'll pop all 3 of them and then they'll take them to flower, and that's one harvest, and they go and buy another pack. Or maybe they had other packs that they purchased just sitting in their vault or whatever, waiting to pop. But eventually they're going to run out, and eventually they're going to have to buy more seeds. And photo periods, the other thing that I think is missed by those people is the value of cannabis medicine. When you find a chemotype, a variety that works really well for you or a patient that you work with, friend, family, whoever, you can keep that cut and cultivate it in a similar environment and try your best to produce it in a similar way so that it'll produce a similar chemotype time after time after time. Where with autoflowers, the consistency, even though they've gotten much, much better, both consistency and potency, I would say it's just not there. And even photo periods, the consistency is not there. If you pop a pack and then you just
I agree with that.
buy the same pack from the same breeder and then try and hunt through it again, you might not find that same exact thing. There's a reason that, like, shout out to Subcool, rest in peace, and Spartan's breeding with his vortex, but like Chernobyl is one of my favorite strains, and there's a cut called the Golden Ticket. It's like literally called the Golden Ticket. Like, imagine losing that. Like that, the reason they named it that is it has such a high value. It was like rare. It was a 1 in a million kind of thing. And if they just, oh, I'm going to buy another pack of Chernobyl and hope that I find Golden Ticket, you might find something that's similar, but it might not be that exact plant. Maybe like the Golden Ticket yielded better or whatever. But funny enough, when I popped Chernobyl, I found a pheno that smelled and tasted and had a similar high to what is described as like Slimer or Golden Ticket, which is a pheno of Chernobyl. And it's possible, but I think that more often than not, you can go hunting for something within a pack that you found initially and have a really hard time to find it again, unless you pop like hundreds, dozens.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with the inconsistency remark. I would also be curious to do you think, I mean, this is sort of a begging the question, but do you think that's a strategic move to move more towards these sort of single harvest plants for breeders and things like that? And also on top of that, not insinuating anything, just curious, I guess, what we think about this. And also, is there a major price difference generally between a photoperiod sensitive and insensitive?
So they're around the same. It depends on where you go. It's more breeder based on cost. So like if you get like a luxury breeder, you're going to be paying double or more. And then if you get like your average run of the mill person, there's like a set price. I would say like $10 a seed is pretty average. So like $50 for a 5-pack, $100 for a 10-pack as far as photoperiods go. I've never bought feminized autos, but when I look, I'd say they're probably a little bit more expensive per seed because they're fem, but that's similar to photoperiod. Like photoperiod feminized are also a little bit more expensive. Like, and you'll, instead of seeing a 10-pack, you might see like a 6-pack for like 100, because I think the way that the breeders think about it and the growers think about it is, if you bought a 10-pack of regs, you're going to get maybe 5 or 6 females. So they offer a 6-pack of femmes because all 6 of them are guaranteed to be female. And so they offer them at a similar price. So it might be 7, might be 8, might be 9. Some people offer 11, 12, however many fit in their little thing, the scoop. I know, Brandon, you sell seeds, and I'm curious kind of your thoughts on the prices as far as photoperiod versus autoflower.
Yeah, you have stimulating ideas about this topic.
So I typically price my seeds anywhere between $60 to $75, and I typically have 11 or 12 seeds in a pack. But
Are
I
they
don't
regular?
really, they're regular. I don't have any fems. I've never, I've never released any fem lines myself.
Well, regular for Brandon, anyways.
Regular meaning that they're male, female, I guess.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm being facetious.
And then, but I know that like Trevor, or Dummy Grows, Gem Seeker Genetics, he has feminized autos, and we've had them listed on the website before, and I want to say I think we had them listed for like $35 for a pack for the fem autos, and I think there was like maybe 6 or 8 in a pack, maybe 6 of them in a pack.
I would say that's under the market average.
So,
What do you think, Spartan? What do you see with like a fem auto costs and things like that out there? I know that you grow autos, and
I'm offended by the cost of seeds, and I'm on. I think Brandon's right at the right spot for what he's. I think, and honestly, I think Brandon's gear is fucking probably 10 times better than 90% of the breeders you're gonna find out there. And I've personally grown his stuff, and I'll vouch for that. But so I think that not only is his quality up there, but I think his price is below market average, like you said. But I think it's the fair price, and I think that's great because that gets more people's hands on the good stuff, and that's where I stand on it. So
I want to give people a fair price. And here's another thing too. I know how to grow really, really well. And so when I'm selecting stuff out, I think that gives me a little bit of an advantage too. If I'm making larger selections and just everything is on point, I mean, that's the best when you're able to like really, really see how different varieties are gonna run.
plus healthy plants make more seeds, so having a bunch of them. I think what you're doing by posting it on Bokashi Earthworks is a direct to consumer model where a lot of breeders have to sell it to a seed bank in bulk. The seed bank then takes it. Maybe they break it down into 10-pack, 5-pack, 3-pack, whatever it is. Or maybe the breeder sends them, here's 100 10-packs, 100 5-packs,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But then what happens
that's
in any business, They take it and they mark it up 100 to 200% so that the seed bank then makes money to do all the customer service work, all the shipping and all that. It's a typical business thing, but then the cost that the consumer gets is higher. So like Subcool, I think used to sell them for like $3 a seed, and then people would buy them for, I don't know what it was, but anyway, that
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
have
bring that up earlier, Jack, when you're saying I forgot to bring it up when I forgot, but I think that's the biggest issue, and that's the biggest tip we can go here for anybody looking to purchase seeds is just reach out to the breeder. If you know the breeder, you follow the breeder, and you're sure it's the absolute, that's their accounts. Reach out to them and just say, hey, I'm looking, I'd really like blah 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 strain. I've been following you for a while, and I'm going to guarantee you, you're going to get a hell of a lot better deal, and be way more happy dealing directly with the breeder. And that goes for both. It goes both ways. It's positive. It's a win-win because you cut out that middleman who's just turning around and flipping it. So
and
that's
you
the
might get
best.
freebies out of it. Like
You're going
fucking,
to. And if you
yeah.
keep contacting him, if you grow that stuff and you tag them and you put it on your social media, and then you fucking reach out again and be like, yo, that last thing you sent me was awesome. Could I get this? What do you think is gonna happen? I mean, what do you think? So I'm just saying, I mean, it can be positive for both. The grower and the breeder can work together and both benefit from the
Dude,
relationship.
and that's true for even like dudes that have been doing this for like Capulator, for instance, right? Like that, like I told him, I was like, yo, man, I lost my gas number 4 cut, which was mine and my lady's favorite smoke. And I was all, do you and I asked him, do you have any more of those seeds laying around? I can't find them anywhere because like they're all sold out on all seed banks, and they go for like $200 a pack when you can find them. And he sent me like 300 seeds. He's like, here you go. Like, no problem. So, if it like just reach out. Most people expect, like people like myself, we're always willing to help.
This is like a religious quote, I think, but like seek and you shall find, ask and you shall receive. That's been my experience a lot of times with, if you have to ask the question, the worst they can say is no. And with what Spartan said, don't gloss over this. Make sure it is the actual person, because there are so many fake accounts. DM me. If you want to get something from a breeder, DM me. I'll open up my DMs. I will go through and vet who you think that you're trying to get the seeds from and make sure that you're actually getting it from them. Like I'll shout out CSI Humboldt. I had to like send like a money order in the mail, which feels really fucking old school. But when I did it, I got not only the packs I ordered, I got like freebie 5 or 10 packs of the same packs that I ordered, plus a bunch of other interesting things. So cutting out that middleman, going direct, and like it felt a little old school, like back in the day when you fucking send something off to Amsterdam and wait like
Never
a month or
knew.
whatever.
You never knew if you were gonna get your fucking seeds, and then you
Yeah.
just assume that you got burnt because it's been
Man, we
been
got fucking
months,
scammed.
and then finally 4 months later you get something in the mail.
Dude,
And it might be something
I'll shout
random.
out Great Lakes Genetics in right here in Michigan. I sent them cash in the mail and I got my shit and then some. So just straight cash.
Yeah, I sent straight cash in the mail for seeds a couple times and I got them. So, but I want to mention that, especially with beans, and it's been my experience that price doesn't indicate quality, and that
Nope.
I get upset that people think, oh, if I pay
The opposite
200
might
bucks,
even be true.
right? The opposite probably is true. So I just want to throw that out there. And
Yeah, like the shit that you get for free from your buddy is probably 10 times better than the stuff that people are spending $350 for a 10 pack on. Like I've spent the $300 for a 10 pack. I've spent the expensive high dollar breeders, and I found some good stuff. But the most amazing shit I found has been like gifted to me, or stuff that like I found some really good shit in the Velvet Punch, shit that I crossed myself from something my buddy bred himself. And it's just there's so much good shit out there for not extreme amounts of money. And I showed the Aromatica Keens page a few weeks back, where I follow like 40 breeders that I think are doing a really good job, and none of them are selling shit for like multiple hundreds of dollars. Like they're mostly like Brandon's prices, which are really fairly priced, and make
It's hard too
accessibility.
as someone who is gonna go pop seeds and pay like $200 for something. It's like, damn, dude. Especially if it's just like, this ain't really that great, or if the shit herms.
Well, especially
Like,
at the scale you want to do it at. You don't want to do
oh,
10
dude,
pack. You want to do a fucking 100. And that's gonna fucking that's an investment, man. That's huge investment.
yeah.
Yeah,
Another
it's a
thing,
lot of risk. It's a ton of risk. And like what Jack was saying about inconsistency, I have my own opinions. People who follow me know about my opinion about claims of resistance and things like that. And, I'm very much looking forward to, some more consistency, I suppose. And also just more informed breeding practice. Because we have some fantastic breeders, and I would count Brandon as one of those people. So I'm very excited to see I'm cautiously optimistic about the next half decade or decade.
like I was tired of complaining about breeders doing it wrong, so I seeked out the good ones and try to grow their stuff. And then on top of that, like I'm doing it myself for hobby and sharing it with a bunch of people so I can learn as much as I can. And my goal is, at least for several years, to not sell any seeds, just gift them and see how it works and try and learn the process. Where a lot of people are just fly by night. They're going to take a male, smack it to every single female cut they have, and then sell a bunch of those seeds with no testing. And I just think that there's some level of morality that needs to be had. And if you want to be a tester, not just for myself, if you live in the US, like I said earlier, ask and you shall receive. Hit me up. I've given out over 100 packs of the F2. I got to a low enough level of F2s that I need to just keep them for in-house testing and future work. But I have F3s now that I'm sending out to all the people. The 50 growers that grew them out of the 100 are getting them slowly but surely. I'm working my way back through my notes and making sure all the addresses are current and stuff. But as a grower myself, when I first started on Instagram, the first group that I grew was Humboldt Seeds. I had a Blue Dream. I tagged them, and it was my first grow in a setup. I didn't have everything dialed in. I kind of fucked up a little bit along the way, and it wasn't even the best looking bud. But I just wrote honest descriptions and was like fair with my reviews, and I went super into detail or whatever, and was not a big page at all at the time. And my next grow, they offered me to be a tester because I tagged them a bunch and I grew their stuff, and I saw that they had a tester application. I put my thing in there and they said, if you've grown our stuff before, then we'll check out your page or whatever. And I got a few, like 4 different strains from them. And then Subcool grew his stuff out. He was looking for testers. I applied to be a tester. I had tagged him a few times from the different grows on my page. He even commented on Lady Greenstock's page a couple times, which took pictures of buds and stuff like that. And when I wrote my description, I tried to model it similar to his, and he chose me to be a tester. And I was like, it's not rocket science necessarily, and it's not like I was fucking growing the fucking perfect dankest buds in the most high tech grow room. It's like I'm in a fucking kitchen cabinet and a hallway closet in a tent. It's like you can do this, people. Like a lot of people out there like don't believe in themselves and don't want to throw their hat in the ring. Come up
But
to the
that's super
table.
important as a breeder. You guys have to remember. I mean, this is what maybe people don't understand is they're not looking for the best growers. They're looking for somebody to test their genetics. I mean, if you grow their plants the best way, and of course you're going to get the best genetic expression. But what happens when you grow it in not a great environment? What happens, when you grow it in cocoa, or you grow it in soil, or you grow it, in with 4 weeks of veg, or maybe you do it with 8 weeks of veg, and you got the huge plants. There's just so many different ways and different variables, and for one
12
person
from
to do
seed.
that, it would take you your
To
whole
me,
lifetime to do one strain to do that. But if you can get a lot of testers, you can get all that information. So all the breeders want is information back. Just
I
be
feel
honest.
like here's
Just be honest too.
I agree with that. I would say that like I feel like that's why it's so important to be very descriptive when it comes to like some describing what are the traits that you're even looking for. Because if they don't survive in a spread of different environments, like like maybe they were very weak, or the way that they the genetic factors that make it happen, maybe there's a key that is missing or is being attenuated in some way. See, like that's kind of what I was trying to allude to earlier. I feel like um, there's a lot of examples where people have just, or essentially they have found something in bag seed, grown it, and maybe bred with it in some way, shape, or form, but they didn't really understand. Like a lot of people don't, and humans have not needed to understand this to make good stuff. But when you do know how like basic genetics work with like plants and stuff, it just feels like there's a like level of expectation that one might have for a breeder. I don't think a lot of breeders in cannabis have that necessarily. And so when they are sending their seeds out to be tested.
Yeah, we call that, and I am the first to admit that's what I am, is a pollen chucker. I'm a pheno hunter and a pollen chucker.
I think there's a gradient that's more nuanced than that, but okay.
But on top of
'cause I
that, though,
haven't- I
like we
haven't
can't do it
selected-
because of plant counts. We can't just go out and plant 1,000 seeds in a field because
Exactly.
none of us have the permits to do that unless you
True.
have a shit ton of money. So we can, point our nose
That
at the
doesn't mean
cannabis
you can't
breeders for
find
not.
something, though. That is true, though. I
Yeah.
want to say that. It doesn't mean that it's impossible to find something interesting.
Well, and I think you can get
It's
more
true.
consistent.
You know what would be a really good example is cotton candy grapes. So cotton candy
Oh,
grapes
sure.
were
Or the
not
moon drops.
genetically, weren't genetically modified in any way. What they did was they did a giant pheno hunt on a bunch of different grape cultivars, and they selected one.
It was like
And
Princess crossed to some Alabama thing.
Yeah. And so it's really, what I like for me, what I like to see in a line, like if I'm doing reg line, I'm going to take the Blueberry Train Mac F2s that I just finished up. When I hunt out this F2, it was an open pollination. And the reason why I would do something like that is to open up the genetics to see what's in there. And I would have to grow out more of them to select for specific characteristics after I've opened up that line. And I feel like that way you can kind of go down that path and get closer to it if you're, selecting out of an open pollinated and then, doing narrow selections for the characteristics that you want and then just breeding into those.
So I have a question. Matthew was kind of alluding to this with like giving descriptions and expectations. I've seen some breeders take the blind approach where they'll just say, this is the red tester, this is the blue tester, this is tester number 1, tester number 2, grow it out and tell me what you smell, tell me what you experience, so that the grower has no idea. They're just kind of going in blind. They grow it out. They say, oh, the red one smelled like this, got this kind of high, this kind of yield. With my testers, I sent out a full page of notes where it said, this is what I smelled. These were the morphologies I got. This is the flowering time that I took it at. If you took it earlier, these are the effects that you can expect. If you took it later, these are the effects that you can expect. This is the smell. This is the taste. And like the initial smell versus like the exhale. Like I was very as descriptive as I could possibly be. And of the 50 people who grew it and gave me information on it, probably 45 out of the 50 had very, very similar descriptions of what I wrote. So I was a little bit worried like that I biased everybody just by sending out a description.
I was just
That's
gonna
a
say that.
really-
How do
see,
you feel?
and that-
Do you think that's
Sorry, I don't wanna-
possible, or do you think? I mean, do you think that's possible for? It's obviously not possible for 100% of those results, but maybe that bias going in was responsible for 50% of those results.
I look at it like
self-awareness is good.
I think
honestly.
that a sommelier, they spend years and years and years. It's not like I'm throwing one under the bus again, like that other group that fucked up the Cowboy Cup. I'm not even gonna say their name, but you know who I'm talking about. People that will charge you $3,500 to tell you're an expert at something. Versus like a sommelier where there's like level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like by the time you're level 4, there's guys like Dame who could smell something and tell you like this is a South American from 1999 and it's a Malbec or whatever. Like he could tell you the country of origin and the type of fucking wine and everything without even blind taste testing and like getting it correct. Where that's non-existent in cannabis yet because we don't have the consistency or whatever. But I fucking lost my train of thought there. We were talking about okay. So the point of a sommelier essentially is most people are not wine experts. Okay. You go to a restaurant, you're having a dinner, and the sommelier comes out at these fancy ass restaurants and tells you about the wine, tells you about the smells and the flavors that you might experience because most people aren't going to be able to pick them out. So I think as a breeder, if you're able to identify characteristics within the plant that you can help others maybe experience those smells and tastes because they might not know to look for them, or they might not have the words to describe them in that way because they might not have experienced like maybe that food, or maybe they might not have just, maybe their brain come across it that way. And everybody has different chemistries, but like Velvet Punch is a purple punch cross. So a lot of people got like grapey stuff, which didn't really surprise me. But like, I also wondered, like, if I just sent it out and said, this is the red number 1, would 45 out of 50 of them said, yeah, I got grape gas, similar to what you found.
Yeah, like genetic ontogeny, right? Like where did this trait come from? What are the genes that cause this thing? First of all, is the trait even is the thing that we're trying to describe, does it breach, like you're saying with the observation bias potential, right? Does it breach a threshold where we're pretty sure that everyone, like if I go, it's like the existential nature of like color, like some people go their whole life or most of their life not realizing they're to some degree colorblind. My father is an example of that. You know, but and so there's little odd edge cases with this, but I would definitely agree with you. It's like you don't need to be a sommelier to enjoy wine or have that level of detail, even, right? And at the same way, you don't need to know like massively advanced genetics to breed something that people like, right? Because it's more than just those factors. But
Well, and all the best
you
shit has
ideally
been
want,
bred by novices. We have
and you would
scientists. We
ideally
have.
want to have that information, though, just to maximize the potential. But it's not necessarily
But here's the
necessary,
thing:
right?
do you really need it? Do you really want it? Because all the people who have it, look at Israel, look at all the states in the U.S., Mississippi, or wherever they're studying cannabis.
What
They've been
is
doing it for
it?
so long. None of them have produced the thing that is the multi-billion-dollar strain that people are going after every single year. Like the GMO, the Chem Dogs, the OG Kushes. So many of them are bag seeds, Girl Scout cookies, Gorilla Glue. We had Josie Wales on the show. He had two really fire strains. One of them hermied onto the other one, and they ended up growing out some of the crosses. And GG4 is still to this day uh, more popular than anything that's come out of any
Still in
whatever
my garden.
laboratory.
Don't you think the prohibitionary context plays a little bit of a role there, though?
I guess, but we'll see.
Definitely, of course it
Yeah,
does.
but they're still tried and true though. They still hold up in commercial markets. They still, here's the thing. If you have a variety that's 20 years old that still has a sell through on a commercial market where you can grow something out and still push it out and people buy it and the consumers like it, that's tried and true, and there are varieties like Gorilla Glue, like Mac One, like Chem D, like sour diesel that still possess those characteristics.
Like the stuff people were growing in the very first high times that to our standards now look incredibly bad, correct? So it's
Well,
contextual, right?
I
Of
mean,
course.
I think that with a lot of these new standards and practices, some of the older varieties might have a new appeal to them as well. Because we're not talking about like the 1978 high times,
Well,
but
that's what
if
I'm
we
referencing.
But even then, people go back and ask, say, "Oh, why can't I get that old school smoke? Everything now doesn't smoke the same. I wish I had that 1970s or 80s or 90s, whatever it was, that era." Usually, I hate to
That
say
is
it,
true
people
because you
in
can't
high
account for
school.
taste
Well,
and
it's
the
also you can't account
context.
for tolerance. The first time you
Well,
use cannabis,
also
it's going to be more
people,
mystical than
I will say this, it's not the
10,000.
same thing, but you are aware that a lot of people, there's studies that show that the kind of music you're interested in is heavily based on some of the music that you get in your formative years, right? And this sort of intuitively makes sense, right? I bring this example up because I think there's a similar sort of thing with things like cannabis, like we're talking about. And like you say, I have a story of a person who, when I was homebrewing more, basically I think I've said the story a few times, so I'll just reference it very lightly. They used to homebrew on a boat as they were traveling around. This is terrible conditions for making alcohol because the temperature fluctuates a lot, and he would get very what we would call foxy or hot, with a lot of fusel alcohols, which most people don't like. However, he's nostalgic for this flavor, and he was doing it at his house, and he wasn't able to replicate it. So again, like with regards to connoisseurs and what is good, what is bad, it's absolutely positively based on your own experiences and expectations in a
But
very
if you look at the
significant way.
broader market, though, California has 40 million people. We have the largest single state use. We're larger than all of Canada. We have more adults and more cannabis users than any other single region. And if you look at the
We're gonna
dynamic,
catch you. We're catching you. Watch out.
you just don't have as many people. You have
I
6 million
agree.
people in Michigan. What, 10 million?
New York never counted.
We're the fifth largest, I think, state in the country, or by populace, and we were just named the best place on earth for to
I love
live
Michigan.
since the
I was
climate
just
change.
the point I was trying to get to with Matthew
Insane.
is
Isn't
when
it
you
like
have
fucking sub-zero temperatures there right now?
Yeah, it kills poisonous shit. No, right now it's not too bad. Right now
I just want to make
it
the
is
point though,
42
guys.
degrees, man.
That was
You
a
have-
poll done in Michigan.
Can I just get one point
I
out?
want to hear what Jack was saying.
Sorry.
If you have 40 million people, it's the consensus is the crowd, the wisdom of the crowd. Okay, California has been legal since 1996. We have had lab testing for at least a decade. We have groups like Steep Hill Labs who have identified every single terpene for 200 terpenes with genetic markers. Steep Hill Lab has not put out a single one of the top 10 cannabis strains in the last 10 years. Okay, so why is it coming out of home growers? Why is it coming out of these random ass spots? Chemists have all the information. They have so much of an advantage. They have billions and billions of dollars. And for the last decade, we haven't seen a single one of them put out a strain that's been appealing to the markets because
Well, I think
the
it's-
sales show what people
I
are
think it's
buying.
federal prohibition, Jack. I
I'm
think-
pretty sure that there's a
I think
yeah.
if federal
I think that's an
prohibition
unfair
drops, Give
comparison.
them 5 years maybe, and then then we'll start seeing some competition. I think.
They're going to
I will
use what
say
we already
that-
have too. They're going to say, "Oh, Blue Dream
Yeah, they
sells really
are.
well," and then
Yeah,
they're
they
going to make
are.
the Bud Light. They're going to make the thing that appeals to the masses, even if it's not the best shit. They're going to make the thing that sells to the most people.
You know, I
Oh,
was in
we'll
I was in
then
Avon's
we'll take that
recently.
shit. We'll take that shit and we'll breed it into our shit, and then we'll have the best shit again. They can
Yeah.
For
do
the
whatever
first
fuck they
time
want.
in my life, I saw draft cola, Pepsi, in a can, nitrogen draft, I think it is. You know, like what they do for beer. And
Right.
I just feel like that's a relevant thing to bring up because like there's going to be this sort of constant improvement on this sort of formula that is sort of at a certain minimum extremely accessible, and it is coming, and in some
Yeah,
ways it's
let
already
me-
here. But I agree with you. I think that
Mhm.
gray market and other sorts of traditional market products are the kings. But I guess I'm just trying to say that like so cannabis did not get to benefit from a lot of aspects of like marker assisted breeding and things that you're saying, and other people through their sheer like dint of skill and grit were able to produce extremely good stuff.
Let me tell you what the problem is for real. Most humans don't even know what exceptionally good cannabis is. And even the marker assisted are probably looking for the wrong markers, and they just don't even know what really
Well, they're
good
looking for very specific
marijuana
things.
is. Right, but the specific things they're looking for might not make it a better product. You know what I'm saying?
They're looking
Better
for shit
in
they can
what way?
patent and sell pharmaceutically in like 10 years when it goes federal. They don't care
Don't
about
resist that. I embrace it. And like I said, if they do something that's great, then I'm gonna get a clone and I'll grow that shit myself. Whatever. Whatever.
I
I'll
think-
still be growing the best weeds. So win-win.
Yeah, I mean, I think flavor and taste wise, those sorts of things are also very complicated. But I also think that they're less dependent on the things that matter for those theoretical things I'm referring to, like marker assisted breeding or just like like for example, understanding resistance and stuff like that. When a lot of people are growing like indoors or in shelter and things like that, that had a massive influence on the gene pool, right? And we've even talked about it in research. But like things like resistance to like high cold stress, high heat stress, certain pests, things like that, hot plate and viroid, right? Looking for tolerance already are people like medicinal genomics. That's going to make better stuff. Unequivocally, you cannot say, I think, that would be worse off. But the things that I think you're referring to for better, I assume, Tao, are things like flavor, aroma, the the effects that you're going to get. Those things are much more complicated, and I think are divorced a little bit from.
Right, like if
What
they
I'm referring
marker
to.
assist on purpose and make it like high THC, they're gonna miss out on other stuff that should be in there as well, But I just want to
Yeah.
mention also that perhaps those all-time highs that everybody's looking for, that shit was grown in Colombia, was grown in Thailand, was grown in the country of origin, and then imported into the States. So that shit was grown under different sun, different conditions, and
Packaged
now,
differently.
yeah.
I think the
so
packaging has
if
such a
there is-
huge role in it.
right.
Everybody
And
I
if
know who does the
terroir is
Malawi
real,
cob,
Right. If terroir is real, then terroir, whatever you want to call it, it'll
Terroir.
never be the same. You can get those seeds and grow them out, and it's not going to be the same. So there's so many variables that I think that yeah, looking for those old school, like when you get the imported stuff, we won't get those highs easily in America, I don't think.
What I'm hearing now is when people basically remove the oxygen and do like a Malawi cob style or like bury it, whatever they have to do to basically take the oxygen out and like pressurize it, maybe even like squish it a little bit. Like I've seen a bunch of people
Oh
doing a bunch of
yeah.
different things that then they're saying after like 3 weeks or 4 weeks or however long, then they smoke it. Like they'll cure it even with like a little bit of moisture in it still with in some cases, and they'll vacuum seal it and fucking they'll smoke it 4 weeks later and say it's the strongest shit they've ever had. So I've been investigating, I guess, a lot of different curing techniques, and a lot of people, Genetic Memory Farms was doing some stuff like that with like a pressure cooker, and then there's people actually doing like the Malawi cob style, and I definitely think that how you cure it can impact the high, and that will also impact the cannabinoid profile, like we see with like hashish. Hashishine is something that wasn't found on the plant for a long time. It was much more commonly found in hash because the terpenes, the way that they blend together when they're removed and balled up, it creates some new sort of terpene mixture.
We should get GMF on here to talk about that. What would you call it? What was it? Like something cob style? Is that a
Malawi
fermentation?
cob, like the African country, I believe.
Oh,
Malawi, is it
Malawi?
Africa?
Yeah, it's Africa. Is that a fermentation? Do they
Yeah, I
ferment
think they
that?
put it in like a corn husk and then they bury it for
That's
3
interesting.
weeks.
That's interesting.
I saw a post on IG where they tried mimicking it. I'm gonna see if I can't find it. They left a bunch of the sugar leaf on and they wrapped it up really tight.
Is
I
it
forget what
fresh or
they
dry?
did, but it was
Right. It had to be
that's a great
fresh. So there's
question.
moisture, I'd imagine.
I think it was a little fresher. I'm gonna see if I can't find the post. But they said it was different. They said it was like old school, like they couldn't finish the joint, him and his kid or whatever. I'll see if I
Like
can't
it
find
was too psychedelic, or for what reason?
Yeah.
yeah, it was like
Nice.
way more potent. Yeah.
I don't know if it was that or it just tasted terrible. That's what I'm saying.
No, it was super potent from the psychedelic nature, I guess. And a lot of people reported that of the older strains. I think both where they were grown, the strains, the sunlight, like Tao was saying, but also they were doing like tie sticks where they were pressing it and they were doing certain things over there. In some cases, there was actually like opium runoff water, the Passau water, which sounds like some nasty stuff. But yeah, you never know in those older days if it was just cannabis. There was heavy amounts of pesticide use. I still wonder
That's
a lot of
true.
people if some of those highs that they were getting might have been coming from pesticides or even potentially molds or mildews and unbeknownst to them, getting sort of high off of that, which might not be a great thing, but it was definitely probably happening to people because that stuff was very much as soon as every market goes legal, you know what happens? They go and they test all the stuff from the gray market. And then a certain percentage of it has a bunch of fucking pesticides and molds because there's a bunch of operators out there that like aren't just like us who grow it for ourselves and like put a lot of passion into it. They're just fucking
They're not
hustling.
growing for themselves. They're growing for
They're growing for a
everyone
buck.
else.
It's a job, it's a business, and they look at it like that. And they're an unregulated business, so they're not going to care about the pesticide regulations. If that keeps their crop alive, that feeds them and their family. So I get where they're coming from. It's just unfortunate that a lot of people, I value cannabis as a medicine very highly. So it's even when I was in the gray and black market days, like here in California, we had medical Prop 215. So I was working at an organic delivery service where we tried to all pick up from, we'd vet the farms and see how they grew and try to make sure to the best of our ability and even lab test stuff, send stuff in to make sure that it wasn't sprayed with, the main nasty stuff that a lot of people were using.
Yeah, I feel like it kind of reminds me of like baking bread. Like I have a yeast culture, sourdough yeast culture. And you can go and get dough from places, right? And all that stuff, but it might not be how you want it to be. It doesn't have that same taste or flavor or sourness, right? And so I kind of feel like in the same way, but at the same time, some people they're able to make really good sour or whatever characteristics or qualities at a larger scale. Like they are able to take those those good techniques and do well with them. Just not everyone does. I just think it's important to like understand that there can be that overlap. Brandon often, I think, and sort of embodies that sort of idea of like you do scale up, but not without taking a certain threshold of like a quality. Like you won't accept that. It has to be above that. And
What I I really
Not
think
to
the
speak
big.
for you, but
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, Matthew.
I would just say not to speak for Brandon or anything, but I think he'd agree with that description.
I think Brandon is one example, and out here in California, like the biggest brand, Cantibiotics, they're not growing any cuts that everybody else has. They hunted their own shit. They went through this guy, Limited Trees Genetics, who has like 10,000 followers on Instagram, who had his own cereal milk across, which is not the Cookies brand MSO cereal milk. It's their own cereal milk. It's like a thick mint OG, which is from a Cookies lineage, to a strawberry lemonade or whatever. And that was their flagship strain. It was like a Southern California group, went out to Nevada, set up shop there, did really well in Nevada, figured out all the regulations, everything, came back to California. Now they're the biggest best-selling flower and biggest brand in California. Their edibles move and everything. And I think when you do like Brandon or them, where you hunt your own genetics, you have a consistent competitive advantage, is how I've heard it described in business. You have something no one else has. And if you grow it well and you market it well, like they have, and Brandon has, really good images that go along with the strains that represent the lineage and the taste and the flavor, and they make it interesting and brand it to their, you know, it's like a lifestyle kind of thing with every brand. At a certain point, you get a feeling from who the people behind it are, and if you relate to them or not, you might choose to go through their product. And really nothing speaks more for itself than the product. I think if you have the fanciest packaging, the coolest names, coolest labels, you'll sell something once, but you're not going to sell them twice or three or 10 or 20 times. To get somebody to keep buying your stuff, like this brand, Kinebiotics, every Friday they do their drops and their stuff sold out by the end of the weekend, at my wife's shop and at many other shops. And people drive around looking for their select stuff. And it's only sold in eighths in glass jars, which is crazy. And shit's like 60 or $65 an eighth before fucking taxes, which is unbelievable. But it still happens. And like people are all talking about how the pound price is so low, so low, whatever. But these big brands that are doing it well are still in business and still doing well. So I think that if you're able to find good genetics and grow your own shit, like how we all do it at home. Like they're basically, like Matthew said, taking it to scale, whether it's baking bread at an artisan level and then scaling that up, learning how you do everything and keeping everything. The problem I think a lot of businesses have is they hire, um,
Outside.
yeah, they hire a business degree person who's got no experience, and I forget what, I think it's an MBA, Masters of Business Administration. They come
That's
in,
right.
they've never done that job, but they went to Harvard or whatever, so they got that MBA from that fancy school, and they're like, hey, instead of doing this how you've been doing it for so long, being successful, we're going to outsource that shit. So we're going to save you $10 on each pound of sugar, and we're going to save you, 50 cents here, 50 cents there. And instead of getting it from that local source that made everything good, they start cheapening up everything. And I've seen this from restaurants to clothing brands. So many things scale and then they fuck up the quality. Like In-N-Out, the restaurant, they stopped scaling because they felt like they couldn't control their quality after a certain point. So it's only on the West Coast. And people
And
generally love
In-N-Out
burger.
is sorry to interrupt, but they're studied often for their business practice, exactly like you're talking about.
They're a step above, I would say, as far as customer service, the quality of their food for the scale. I mean, for fast food, it's a fair price and high quality for what it is. I'm somebody who eats and enjoys fast food. Admittedly, I'm ashamed of it. Whatever, fucking shame me in the comments. I eat healthy a lot of the times too, but I also enjoy fucking the nasty ass trashy. Like I'll eat McDonald's, but I can say that McDonald's is a lot different than In-N-Out for a lot of reasons.
I agree with that.
Those practices, you can scale to a point, and I think you got to keep hiring the right people, and you have to stick with. My dad used to say, "Dance with the one that brung you," and it's kind of like a saying about like going to a dance, right? You should dance with the person who actually brought you there. But he would use it in like the saying for like sports. If you were a basketball team and you got to a championship playing with a certain type of defense, a certain type of offense, and then you try and change it up because now it's a championship game, like that's not a good idea. You should stick with what you did that got you there, because usually that's what's going to make you successful. And granted, sometimes there's a need to change when things aren't working, and to get to that next level, sometimes you have to do something that you've never done before to get somewhere you've never been before or whatever. But there's a lot of, I think, success in keeping with the successful strategies that worked for you, and people love to shame the home grower because it's like, oh, what does this home grower know? They've never done it at scale. And then so many of them step in and fucking crush it at scale. Aaron the grower, fucking Brandon Rust, like Spartan Grown and the crew over at Mint and Canico, like they take it from their experience and just do it at a larger scale. And you think that it's not going to be possible, but maybe they don't crush it the first run. They get better every single run though, and they have the passion. And I think that those people, a lot of people call them Chads, or the corporate people come in and that passion's not there. They get the lowest dollar per hour employees in there, and they get the big popular cut that everybody has available to them. So like everybody's growing jealousy because it tests at 40%. And then, it's like, what do you have that makes you different? What do you have that makes you special?
Jack, I have a perfect example for you. And it was a job interview I did at a grow here in Jackson. And they were like this big, I go in and it's crazy because there's a gated fence. You had to get let into even to go park. And it was all high tech. And I was like, wow, I'm impressed. So I sit down with these two, we'll call them Chad and Chad. And, after a little bit of talking, I said something about growing, and they said, oh, well, yeah, we don't have anybody, we don't let anybody grow and still work in the gardens here. And I said, I laughed. I said, you're not serious, are you? And they're like, yeah, that's an IPM issue. I'm like, oh my God, you guys' IPM is so weak that you couldn't, that you're worried that somebody's bringing it in from their house, not in the fucking giant ass parking lot, not in the bushes you have manicured outside your doors that harbor bugs, none of that. That doesn't bother you, but somebody that's got to grow miles away, that's what's bothering you. And God forbid your growers get better at their craft. You wouldn't want that. No, that's a terrible idea. Let's not do that. Well, I don't think that I don't think the interview went well
Yeah.
after that, but I mean, it was like offensive to me. It was like, what?
I have to agree with that assessment. I understand that there are jobs out there where, like, for health reasons and things like that, there are certain things that you just aren't allowed to do, right? And it's on your own free time, right? But I feel like this is you don't see this in other agricultural products or places. In fact,
You cannot have a
speaking
garden.
speaking from personal experience, yeah, a lot of the coworkers I've had in agricultural work, yeah, they landscape or they do all kinds of other things and are avid gardeners and horticulturalists of their own repute, and you can tell that they're masterful at their craft because it's actually something that they're passionate about. It's really, really myopic. I was going to also mention that as an example for like improvements and things like that, currently there's a massive resurgence of a virus called impatiens necrotic spot virus, and it's killing a lot of the lettuce in Salinas Valley and other parts of California. It's been a huge problem. If you've noticed your salad prices or other vegetation prices have gone up, that's why.
Or are just not available. Like a lot of
Or
places,
just not available. Yeah, exactly.
they say no lettuce,
And
like fast food specifically. Like we have no lettuce available right now.
imagine this happens with cannabis, right? It's like it's one of those things where I feel like um it's story of my life, story of my career. A lot of people don't have any respect or very little appreciation or understanding, rather, of all these things could mess up that, like, especially cannabis not having benefited again from some of these sort of infrastructural support that we have in modernity, for better or for worse. This has caused a problem that I think that I'm just very worried that we won't be able to solve. I think that we will be able to solve it, but like without significant costs. It's already happened, like millions of dollars of damage, right? If something else were to occur that was equally damaging, like this INSV, I just feel like people wouldn't be calling it, not an improvement. If we're able to resist some other problem in the future before it becomes a major issue, not only through research but also through people just knowing about it and making changes to their growing because it's a problem in their area. We don't even have that, like a sort of a bolo, like, hey, if you're in these areas, they're getting hit hard by XYZ. Not really any of that. That's actually one thing that I'm going to be doing more this year and following years, is I'm going to be forecasting some of that information more, because a lot of that information for pests that attack cannabis and many other plants, it does exist out there, and I think it would benefit growers. So
It would
keep
for
your eye
sure.
out for that. Yeah.
Well, a lot of cannabis growers grow other plants, so even if they don't attack cannabis, it's still good to know if there's something out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Jack, you mentioned something really good too about how when things get more legal, or hopefully when, or if things are just more accepted and people are able to do more assessments, even personally, privately. Like with hazelnuts, I had a video a while ago that talked about hazelnut powdery mildew. And during that, in the research that I looked at about it, one of the things that the researchers found was that, well, one, this powdery mildew strain is kind of like a single strain that hasn't really hybridized with other things around it. So it's kind of like from one sort of infection point. But also, they found that when they looked for like resistance in different plants, well, they found that like of course, it's the highest, the most well-known name, tombul. These are like the big hazelnuts that most people get in confectionery and things like that. They're the good guys. They're the high price ones. Wouldn't you know it? A lot of orchards that say that they had tombul didn't have tombul, even though they called it tombul, because nobody was looking at it, or because of the way that people would grow it. They just would say, "Oh, I'm pretty sure it is," and they just call it that.
I'm
That
shocked,
sounds very
Matthew.
familiar, doesn't it? So
I'm shocked.
it does happen. It does happen. And it's just one of those things where if we know that, then you can make
You mean
informed
I can get
decisions on
more
that.
for this bag if I call it runts?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
so
what just went down in the regular agriculture industry. So people don't be surprised, I guess, when you see it in cannabis. I think,
Say, I found that post. If you want to check out this way this dude did this cop thing.
yeah. Share the screen. I made it so
All right, I
everybody can
got
share.
it. Yep.
And I just want to say funny, quick story while it's popping up. I went to an interview once thinking it was a cannabis job, and it was like talking about like botanical specialist, like a blah blah blah, and it made it seem like cannabis, and it ended up being like a kratom or kratom interview.
Oh man.
oh yeah.
That's
So
a
I was like
different thing,
halfway in,
man.
I had like my cannabis resume and like all this shit, and then I find out it was like a Spartan moment. Like halfway through, once I figured that out, I was like, oh, this isn't gonna fucking work.
Did they just like keep saying medicinal plant, medicinal plant? You're like, yeah, medicinal
Yeah.
plant.
Yeah, and in
Exactly.
California, I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, this is just like
Yeah.
a really interesting way of like, trying to hide the fact that you're trying to hire for your cannabis business. And then, yeah. Anyway, but Tao, go ahead
Oh,
and talk us through
Rascal
Rascal
Farmer. I
Farmer's
just want to
post.
mention he's from Michigan. Shout out to my
Yeah,
buddy
yeah.
Rascal Farmer, man.
So this guy, Rascal Farmer, says 3 years ago I heard about Southwest Asian cure and I was skeptical. I wouldn't smoke that disgusting looking shit. I said I smoked that swag in the 80s. Something got me though. I age hash, and this is an aging process, not really a cure. But let me back up a little bit. 1984, I was sitting with 3 buddies in a car, stoned off my ass after the 4 of us smoked an average joint of some Colombian brickweed. We were doing rock, paper, scissors to see who was going to go in his store and buy drinks because we were too stinking paranoid to go in. But we had cotton mouth so bad we could have spit dust. So we sat there for 30 minutes staring at the door before we drove off. What the hell? Was it just because that was a sativa and today's weed is hybrid or indica? I wasn't buying that answer. Then it hit me. All that weed was air dried, pressed into a brick, wrapped in plastic, airtight, loaded into a boat, and made its way to northern Michigan somehow. It was all Southeast Asian cured by default, like age hash. I figured the myrcene had started to convert over to hashishine, just like it does in the temple balls. You rupture the trikes under pressure and everything homogenizes as it ages. I grabbed some colas of Pinus tropicalis, my green ice hash plant by Vortex, out of a bucket and wrapped them in that turkey bag as tight as I could. I removed the large fan leaves, but you leave on the sugars. Then I vacuum sealed it as hard as my machine would. That was 5 weeks ago. My son and I rolled a joint of that last night, and that was as far as we could get with it. We were spacey, kind of wrecked. This morning I packed up my Jones with some of it mixed with some hash I smoke every day. I got 3 hits off before I wanted to set it down. It doesn't hit the same, taste the same, or feel the same. Hasn't been quite that high. Hasn't been quite that high in a long, long time. Maybe your daddy was right. So there's the pictures of it when he took it out, I guess, of the thing. And then they stopped
He left
the
it.
joint
It looks like he left it on the bud, so he didn't like buck it. So he just
On the
took the whole
stem.
bud.
Yeah.
Okay, on the
He
stem.
put the
So
whole
these-
thing in vacuum sealed it. And that's what it kind of looked like when you would pull out some pieces from exported weed,
Yeah, back in the day, Colombia and Thai stick, all that shit.
Yeah. So
I think this is definitely worth trying. And this was the post I was referencing. He said
this
5
was
weeks.
dry
I said
bud.
3.
This was dry bud, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
Okay.
I saw another person who did it. God, I wish I could remember who it was, but they were.
I'll put the link in chat.
like just like right about when you go into a jar, essentially. Like still got some moisture to it, but not like bone dry, you know, like a smokable bud. I wish I could find the post, but I'm not gonna be able to pull it up. One of the problems of following 7,500 growers on Instagram is that you occasionally lose stuff. I tend to actually use that little saved feature, the little flag thing, but sometimes like it isn't as immediately pressable, and then I forget to do it or whatever. But or I save so many that I can't find it in all my saved posts. But that is a really interesting thing, and shout out to Rascal Farmer and Genetic Memory Farms and everybody else
Yeah.
who's experimenting with that stuff, because that's cutting edge science of like that. This is the shit that we need to do. We really, and I would like to see lab testing. I think it probably is hashishine. Like he said, the description he gave was perfect. It ruptures trichomes, and then it homogenizes within, whether it's the hash, like Frenchy cannoli style, where you roll out a temple ball while you're taking those strikes. If you look under a microscope, if you just take dry sift and you look under a scope, you can still see all the fucking heads until you like heat it up and roll it and press it. And even then, you can still see a lot of the heads, even in like Frenchy style hash, unless you really, really take it and fucking smash it all together and get it to be a homogeneous resin. And when you do that, it changes the chemical profile. It's like when I was a kid, I was really surprised when I found out scrambling an egg was a chemical reaction, not a physical reaction. Because I was like, well, it's a physical action. You're just fucking scrambling the egg, right? And like scientifically, it's a chemical reaction because it cannot be unscrambled once you scramble it. And so I think that's the kind of same thing with the resin, with the hash. It's like once it is made into hash or once it's pressed into that thing, you cannot like unpress it. That process has taken place. It's gone down that chain and it's a new thing. It's a different product. Like you said, like they could barely smoke it. So there's something about it. Maybe they have lower tolerance to hashishine, and maybe eventually they'll gain tolerance to that. Or maybe that hashishine is like THCV, where there's just not a ceiling. Like if you smoke enough Vortex, I'm hoping that I find a pheno with THCV in it from Spartans F2s, it'll just keep on carrying you up and up and up, and to the point where you're like tachycardic. Like I'm a heavy smoker, and like a really, really good Vortex or some of the THCV phenos can get your heart fucking racing. And like you just feel like you've never felt so high, or you have to like go run or do something. Like you just have so much energy.
Yeah, and you're just like forced to put it down. You're like, if I keep going, I'm fucking get sick.
Yeah, like you might get the spins or something, or just feel
Yeah.
like paranoid. And like you said, like your natural inclination, I believe that our body, we're intuitive creatures to some regard. Like if you're just able to smoke a joint and keep going, it's saying I'm not too high. I can just keep on going.
Yeah.
My tolerance is high enough. I can fucking sit here and smoke joints. I might not be talking perfectly on the podcast or whatever, but I could sit here, you know, comfortably and smoke more joints. But with stuff like that, you literally like your body's like, oh shit, like I need to set this down. Like I'm too fucking high. And sometimes, especially when you stand up, you'll notice like, oh fuck, like this is really strong. Like you're trying to do something and you realize like, wow, this is a lot stronger than I was expecting it to be.
It's always fun to discover.
It's rare for me these days, but if you take a really heavy edible dose or RSO dose and
yeah.
or try a new strain, like something with the THCV, perhaps.
Yeah.
Brandon, did you work with anything that has a THCV?
No, not that I know of.
Because I know you got a lot of your stuff tested, so that would be something that would stand out. And
Yeah, I haven't seen any THCV. That gas number 4 that I mentioned did have high CBG, I think it was.
I remember that, yeah. And that
It was
was
like
like even
one.
in the harvested bud, which everyone's like, wait, shouldn't CBG already be turned into like THC or THCA? And that's something that they're finding in hemp too. Like there's like a 10% CBG cultivar, and it has its own medical benefits. A lot of people are finding CBG to, you know, just like lots of other cannabinoids have tons of different medical benefits.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like when I have a more robust overall profile, doesn't necessarily need to be super high numbers. It's just a better overall effect. And specifically, like I know, like my sour cheese berry, for instance, that specific cut, I know that, because 16 different growers grew it out on a competition. I got to see the cannabinoid tests and I got to see the terpene tests from all those different grows. And it has unique terpenes that are not common in most of the varieties that are common today. Things like delta 3 carrying, oceamine, um, and things like There's one that's called Bisu.
Bisabolo.
Yeah, Bisabolo.
Dude,
Things like
that
that, which
Osamine
all
tastes so
have.
good and smells so good. Sorry, it is pretty rare. I know the Mendo Dope has a pheno. It's called like Osamine Kush or something because its
Mhm.
number one terpene is Osamine as well.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see that because I really enjoy that. It's a pretty unique
And the high's
smell.
different. The effect on that specific type of weed is just way different. And it's like, I notice when I smoke that, there's nothing else like it, but I don't have any other varieties that have their main terpenes are more rare, like that's the thing. So it'd be really nice to be able to find more stuff that carries higher quantities of those rare terpenes.
I think we'll find that with like Matthew was talking about earlier, with hopefully all this corporate, if these guys share anything, which I don't, that's the one downside. I don't think like us will fucking sell it or share it or pass it around. With a lot of these bigger companies, they're gonna find, isolate, and the reason that this stuff isn't top 10 California sales is because they're still working on it privately in their labs, and they're probably not even putting it into the markets because they're trying to patent, isolate, and do whatever they have to do, and just identify all their markers and chemotypes so they can know when the floodgates open, they're going to start to try and buy and control certain things. And
Yeah, I feel like they could be greedy. They could definitely take like a massively greedy route, right? Which many have already done.
yeah, that
You
biotech
know,
LLC or whatever with the fucking crazy patents that they have.
right, exactly. And also like you're saying, it's like you could go one way with it and be like more, industrialized or rather, just sort of commercial, but still kind of maintain that quality and that like esprit de corps of like, not being evil, right? Or not being super controlling. Um, and unfortunately, like even if you wanted to be good natured about it, like there's so many, especially in California, as we well know, there's so many pitfalls and traps that like it seems like the only people who could even sort of, deign to try are people who might be um without scruples at all. And I don't really want those people to be at the, at the helm of the California cannabis corporate system. I think that maybe it could be done in a way that is not so jarring, but what do I know? I'm just somebody who has a sort of a passion for this crop, and I want to make sure that people do things like this, like effectively. I know it's possible, but are people going to actually do it? That's the question. Are we going to incentivize good behavior?
The problem is so much of our future is determined by policies that are probably not going to be written or put into place by people like ourselves. Like
Exactly.
a lot of these giant, huge money corporations that get these laws passed actually have no connections with us. And so they have a lot of the control. Like there's weird policies that get put into place and a lot of people get cut out. And just as a general reminder, I mean, this is the cheap home grow. A lot of us are just home growers. And I don't think that people should feel bad about that if they haven't gotten to like pursue the dream and go on to do something like Brandon or Spartan or Aaron Scale, where they've gone to that commercial level and like had hundreds or thousands of plants and gotten to do it like professionally. Because ultimately, like anything, I guess, at least for me, like even working the delivery side of things and seeing grows and knowing a lot of people now working in them, I think that there's so much joy to be had in the home grow. Like, I really think that this is like the fucking pinnacle. Like, if you really think about it, you have 100% control, ideally,
Absolutely.
over your domain. You choose the medium, you choose the genetics, you choose the lighting, the fans, you choose it all. It's all your control. When you go into that job, it's their decision. If they're going to get the best one, if they're going to get the worst one, or in between, you might know, oh, that fan's going to fucking break because it's a piece of shit, but we're just going to have to deal with that when it comes or whatever at the commercial grow. And you could tell them, and then they might just ignore you. And then you're going to have to be there dealing with the problems when it breaks. And so and like Spartan mentioned a lot in the past, a lot of it is just mopping the floors and de-leafing plants. It's not a lot of glorious time. A lot of it, like the harvest time, might even seem like really fun, but a lot of people have allergic reactions to that giant amount of terpenes in plants. So like you might actually be like hived up and like wearing sleeves to your fucking hand and gloved up and wearing a respirator in there. So like
Yeah.
value the home grow. Like enjoy your time with your plants. I know a lot of you guys do, and you don't need to be reminded of this, but I see so many people that are like, oh man, I can't wait to get a job in cannabis. I might move states to get a job.
Mhm.
And I'm like, if you're able to realistically grow your own plants at home, you might get as much or more joy out of it. And even like doing small breeding projects and interacting with communities like this, like the top isn't that much further away from where you're already at right now. Like the amount, at least for me, the level of joys that I've been able to experience at like this relatively modest, lowly home grower scale that a lot of people love to shit on the internet, like all the time. I'll be on Instagram and people will be like, fucking tent grower, or like, you're just a home grower. What the fuck, I'm like, guys, like they might actually be extremely knowledgeable. Like some of the best breeders came from the tent, and a lot of, I don't know. It's just
My
an interesting
opinion,
community.
my opinion about that is like, if I was in charge of like a strategic goal, right, to like make sure that we had, we being whatever, maybe like the government or whatever, if we as a group, like in California or the United States or wherever you are, and you're like, hey, I want to make sure that we're incentivizing, sort of intellectual growth and like mastery of a certain thing so that more people are better at it. And if that's cannabis, well, you don't want to ban it, people from experimenting with it. That's very not helpful, right? Like I feel like we get a lot of our good, we get a lot of our good marksmen because people are able to do that at their own, leisure in a lot of places. We get a lot of good mechanics. We get a lot of other good people because independently are able to investigate and be interested and like sort of build those skills. In some ways, even get paid for it before they're maybe even like at a certain level of mastery or like profession or before they get a license for something or something like this. And I just feel like, especially in agriculture, the same kind of thing. Imagine if you couldn't have a garden or something, or you couldn't easily access like certain tools that people can easily get,
It's ridiculous.
notionally speaking. Yeah. Where are these talented people going to come from? That they have to go to like some journeyman school and like do it? No, that's ridiculous. And
Oaksterdam and the
yeah, it's
sorry.
just like no, it just seems as though like, yeah, if you wanted to incentivize like above parity with other people you're competing with, that, and you want to like make sure that like, I don't know, like if you wanted to be, I know there's other issues with this sort of a mindset, but like just theoretically, if you wanted to incentivize good growth and make sure there's like amazing quality growers, people who are very skilled at what they're doing, then you had to make sure, then you would want to incentivize that they know good theory, get to practice it themselves, and have a lot of time doing both of those things and getting very good at that sort of thing. Now, some people might not be able to do that on their own, but a lot of people are able to do that on their own, or at least reach a certain level of skill. And if you take that away, then obviously you're going to have a lot less of that. And then how are you going to compete with the world when inevitably, this kind of becomes opened up, or at least that's my opinion. Anyways, I just feel like it's, even if you were being incredibly greedy as a nation like the United States, I feel like if you want to make the money from cannabis, then at least do that. Like let people home grow, let people home brew. I believe it was Carter who signed that in law, right?
We can at least grow
alcohol
6.
prohibition.
The only thing is that we can't grow outdoors, which is kind of bullshit because California, I mean, we should all be able
Yeah.
to grow outdoor with those 6, but sorry, I cut you off. And
Oh no, it's okay. I was just thinking, because with home brewing is the same thing. There was a prohibitionary period, and then now people can even like make certain kinds of alcohol at home.
I remember my
and
point is
oh
France,
yeah,
do they have a home like wine industry or an artisanal wine industry, or is it all like, to me, champagne is pretty commercial, but I mean, it's probably expensive and there's lots of different levels of champagne, but like that's the one I think of. And I know
like a
there's lots of,
nanoscale thing. Like, are there like nanoscale or microscale like champagne?
yeah, like is that popular in France? Is that a large culture? Like, is there a smaller scale, but like maybe higher price point thing that I'm probably just not aware of? I know that there's really
I think
expensive
so.
wines.
but I don't know for sure.
You can't call it
I
champagne unless
don't know if
from
it's
that
nanoscale.
actual area. So
And
I
then
think
they
that's
have even more
pretty
rules on top of
limited.
that. It has to be grown a certain way with like a
Yeah,
certain
that's what I'm saying.
cultivation.
It limits it pretty. I don't think there's probably a huge market. Maybe one or two people maybe can get away with it. But if they're doing all that, they're probably trying to be big.
I think not
Mhm.
specifically the strain or terroir champagne, but like just in the country of France
Yeah.
is micro
Oh,
wine
okay. So not champagne,
making,
but something else.
yeah, like any
Similar
type of,
problem.
yeah, mixes. I know blends are a thing, but I know that there's wines that they get sold out and like people auction for them and spend like thousands and thousands of dollars for a few bottles or cases. It's pretty insane. Like, and I think that cannabis is similar enough. It's a flavorful intoxicant in a way, and there's going to be that market. I think once we go federally legal and people start to have that appreciation for the people that do separate themselves and
Well,
begin
I
to
think
have certain practices and guidelines.
I think you guys both brought up really great points to why, above all else, what has to be protected is home grow, and then
Uh-huh.
from there, I think a free market is better than fucking restricted market, and I think there's room for the big fucking. We keep doing the alcohol references, so I'll stick with that. But like the Bud Lights, we got room for that, and we've got people that absolutely that's all they need. But the good news is that there's a thing called tolerance when it comes to cannabis. So eventually, the people that started on the Bud Lights are going to want to step it up, and then when that happens, quality will be there, and that's where the home market is, or the small scale is theirs. And I think that's the best model in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's just like, yeah, if the only reason why you would try to stranglehold is that you're being incredibly greedy and short-sighted. That's my sort of hot take about it. Like, if you want to prosper, you should have people home grow. If you don't want to prosper, if you want to make everything tightly controlled, then you're also going to tightly restrict a bunch of other things down the pipeline. You know,
It's a
yeah,
bottleneck effect. You really
exactly,
are.
'Cause it
100%.
creates a ton of cost for the end consumer, which means less people have medicine available to them because, we have to pay the government to fucking watch us and make sure that, you know, we're not fucking up, I guess.
On the back end, and then like massive taxes and things like that too, right? So it's just punishment. It's a syntax,
Well,
right?
and like
I think.
there's like testing. I love that, for people
Oh,
that are
sure.
vulnerable, like
Yeah.
testing for pesticides and molds
Let's
and
be
mildews. That's
honest. Come
cool.
on, Jack. Let's be
But
honest though. If that wasn't a requirement and it was a free market, you think the market wouldn't self-adjust to that already?
no, I
I think
mean
there
they
Well, there are
probably be
will.
some
more.
things.
I would argue there'd probably be more stringent testing than there is now.
Well, there's a reason we don't have private firefighting. I mean, we have some of that too, but we also have a public firefighting corps, right? Because, well, that would be kind of messed up if you could just be like, my house is on fire,
I will
and
say the private
everyone's
market
like,
tends to do a lot better. Like if you walk into like,
I was gonna say I'd tend
Apple
to buy
Store
that
versus like the
option.
DMV is a comparison I always hear. And it's like how clean and well run like a private industry is usually versus like the DMV or the post office or any other government agency, usually not the most well run. A lot of, fat that could be trimmed, a lot of, just
there's
they kind
corruption
of
in
rest on their
both
laurels.
disciplines. But
Yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's hard for me to really. I don't know. I feel like a private. It's all down to your construction, really. At the end of the day, are you actually hiring people and trying to like weed out, that sort of
Well, you said something
proclivity.
earlier about like military and like I know a lot of ex-military individuals and a lot of them will tell you that a lot of the private guys here in the US have better stuff and more equipped than they not that they have like drones, but the actual like handheld things. They have more
Yeah, they
expensive.
also don't go. They also don't come back for you
This
in a
is
lot of
true.
cases. Yeah, no, but I agree with you. Well, like on top of, well, one talk about corruption. Like, how about our military industrial complex? That's something that
The fucking Pentagon budget being audited and like
a
failing for
black
like
budget. Yeah.
however
How
much, and
about
they want to go after us for $600 on Venmo or fucking Zelle or whatever, which thankfully they pushed off for another year apparently, so you don't have to worry about that. But next year, all of your $600 and above, like if you sent your buddy fucking money for rent or food and shit like that, like you're gonna have to explain this and potentially pay taxes on it, which is crazy. But that's pretty American specific tax information that I'm sure a lot of our foreign listeners don't give a shit about. But it is interesting, and so much of what our future depends on really is law, like I was saying earlier, and like it could be just some shady billionaires, whatever, behind closed doors shaping how it happens. So as much as
Didn't
we
that
can,
happen recently in Russia? Didn't we recently see, was it Curaleaf or somebody is a major investor in
It
like
was
an
Curaleaf.
MSO?
Yeah. Our
Was it?
big buddies in the MSO Curaleaf had fucking investments from Russian oligarchs. What a surprise.
oh, and guess who has a whole bunch of, I'm not going to say it on air because I don't want to get sued, but yeah, there's a lot of money from not so good places in public cannabis. Whether, the stuff that I can legally say is like big tobacco is clearly in cannabis already. So like Altria Group and many others at this billions of dollars scale. And then there's also, potentially, I won't say the countries, but like cartels are investing in California and elsewhere because they see the money
They're not
that's
even
to be
hiding
made.
it.
No, they're bragging about it. They're like talking about, I want to have a brand like this brand. Like it's
Oh yeah.
almost comical, but they're participating in the legal market and the illicit market. So why not, right? It's
Yeah, there's a very famous exercise that happened in the military with the Navy, and without making a massive long story, basically, um, they were using a proxy for some country as the enemy, and then like the U.S. carrier fleet or something, and basically they challenged another naval officer and their cadre to beat the Americans using this proxy force, this in this like experiment, and they were able to overwhelm like the jewel of the U.S. Navy with a bunch of cheap swarm tactics, a bunch of small boats, and with enough explosives, enough of them get past with the saturation attack, destroy aircraft carriers, all this stuff. The Navy is like at the end of that exercise, they're like, oh, that didn't count. Let's redo this test, and they're like, but
it
like
doesn't meet our Navy standard testing.
yeah, it's just like, I guess I bring it up because you got to watch out for that. Like
It reminds me of the question: would you want to fight like one horse-sized duck,
one horse-sized duck? Yeah.
or like 1,000 duck-sized horses? And then there's like
Yes.
the darker one that it's like, how many like 10-year-olds could you fight off or something like that? Like eventually, like if there was just enough of anything and they swarm
Yeah.
you, you're gonna lose like at certain
Yeah.
points. So it's unfortunate that that power can happen, whether it's this sheer volume of people or in the cannabis space's case, volume of funneling money into something, whether it's the policy or even just like buying licenses, literally spending millions of dollars to purchase one of the only licenses in Arizona or only licenses in Florida. Like there's like 100 something in Arizona and there's like less than 30 in Florida. And something I found out about Florida, one of the councilmen is like being sued or put in jail because he did some back alley deal that made it so to have a farm permit in Florida, you needed to have a farm for 30 years. 30 years
It's so
before.
ridiculous.
And it was
Wow.
because he owned a bunch of farms that he owned for 30 years. So he pushed a bunch of money to a certain person who was able to write this into the policy and make it some fucking tiny little fine print that nobody's even going to think about until the licenses start rolling out and nobody can fucking get them except for this guy. So there's shit like that. It just, unfortunately, like they're shooting themselves in the foot a little bit because in like California's case, we had 50,000 growers and they only put out 5,000 permits. So 45,000 growers aren't just going to pack up shop. I mean, some of the ones that paid for the permits are packing up shop, but there's a lot of people here and we're kind of known for, California's known for cannabis. So to cut 45,000 of your participants out of the market because you just decide, oh, we only want to give out a certain number of permits is sort of, you're going to bottleneck yourself and you're going to cut potentially what made your state famous for that product no longer existent. Like the thing that made Humboldt special, the thing that made, Mendo special, the thing that made Southern California special. If you cut all those people out, then California is no longer like Michigan will be, if they're not already. I just haven't been to Michigan, but I strongly suspect they're already the fucking cannabis capital in the US. Like everything I see from there looks like the same or better quality. And the people are fucking putting out fire. The breeders, the growers, the hash makers, like everywhere you look in Michigan. I'm over here in California, like, fuck, I'm jealous of Michigan Bros Grocery. I have to stop watching because I'm sitting over here like green with envy, looking at these guys, and I'm in fucking Southern California, like supposed to be like one of the meccas of cannabis. And my wife works for a company that has a huge budget where she gets fucking hooked up with all sorts of product for free here in California. I get to try all the fucking brands, and I'm like, damn, I would really like to try some of the stuff in Michigan from the home growers and the fucking brands alike. It's an earlier market. It almost reminds me of California a few years ago as far as like the regulations and things like that. It was more like our medical days. I know you guys are rec now and you have very stringent testing as well. So, but you just implemented it a little bit better, it seems like to me, because you still have micro licenses and people that are participating on the smaller scale, and you have caregivers. That was a big thing that's not really implemented as strongly here in California anymore. 215 is like a hollow shell of its former self. And the medical system is very, very slim versus it's like almost all rec. It's like 99% rec, like 1% medical here.
Yeah, that's for now, man. That's the things that they always go after is first is caregivers, home grow. So you got to stay up on what the politicians are trying to pull. But yeah, I think that's my only advice is stand up, man. I mean, when something is wrong, just stand up and say something. It's this in this day and age in this country, don't be afraid anymore. There's no reason for you to be. Like that perfect example, I walked the walk in that job interview, you know, that could have been great for me. It could have been a great job, great paying job, but I was fucking offended to my core when they said that they don't want their employees homegrown. Fuck you. I will not stand for that, you know? And, you know, I pretty much told them that. So yeah, I just encourage people to stand up for it. And I think that makes a difference. That people don't usually expect that. So, and if you just sit quiet, we're going to stay grindingly moving forward, but we're still moving forward. But, you know, we can increase that pace a little bit if we just start speaking out. There's, especially, it's easy for me to say in a state that's legalized, but I'm saying at least in the legalized states, even, you know, when your job says something about piss test and be like, what the fuck are you wasting your money piss testing in a state where it's legal for cannabis? You know, drop that off of the piss test. That is dumb. You know, just say, I mean, I don't know. I know people are so scared, but what are they really
It's
going to do?
very in vogue. It's very in vogue for people to be like, oh, don't become politically active because nothing matters. And, you know, the Illuminati.
That's a scam. I really think that's a scam.
That's a
They put out
scam.
to fucking
Yeah.
make
It's a
people not
psyop.
participate. And it's strong within our community. A lot of people are in California, especially, believe that the political process is all fucking corrupt.
Ooh.
And they don't have a fucking chance to have their
Nice.
voice heard. But if you go, like, you can speak at a local council meeting, you can vote. Voting actually fucking matters. They do count. People will fucking argue about that all day long. But yeah, go out and vote if you can, if you're able to. Some people have had their rights taken away over this plant, sadly. A lot of people got arrested, got felonies, and now no longer can vote for life over their fucking cannabis crime. So work to advocate for expunging that in your state, because if you get those expunged and taken off your record, have that felony removed, you can have a whole bunch of rights given back to people, which would change their lives very much for the better. And I think that needs to happen in every state that it hasn't already.
No,
Yeah, it's
in jail and prison still for things that are legal where they're at
over like
now,
joints, a
which
couple
is
joints.
for possession.
It's-
It's just
super disempowering.
I agree.
And I totally understand being cynical or jaded, especially people who had to live through a harsher time than I ever had to experience, you know.
Well, and the government's powerful. It truly
Of
is.
course. Yeah.
And it is at points corrupt, but there are ways to fix it. There is ways to improve.
It's better to settle my own soul to say that I tried. Whether it's a rigged system or not a rigged system, you can argue for days and never get to the answer. But ask yourself, did I try to do something
Yeah.
about it, or did I just bitch about it? You
There's
know?
a great story about like a guy, he's on the beach and there's a bunch of starfish washed up, and there's like hundreds, maybe thousands of starfish, and he's picking them up and he's throwing them back in the water. And somebody comes up and they're like, what are you doing? You're not gonna be able to save them all. And he's holding one in his hand. He's like, I saved this one. Fucking tosses it back in the ocean. And like Spartan just said, you might not be able to save them all. You might not be able to change everything, but you can make a difference. So I think it's something to be inspired. And I know, Spartan, this is actually the time of the show that you typically give your final thoughts and shout out. I think that was a great thought and note to end things on. So where can the people find you and where are you going in 15 minutes?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I'm going to the Michigan Bros Grow Show. You can catch me over there. I see a couple of my buddies in chat right now. Skillbo, Red Setter Farm. Wow, my mouth is not working anymore. But they'll all probably join me on the show, and I'm sure you're going to see everybody else from the Michigan Bros Grow Show. It's always a fun time. Who knows what we talk about? It's not. Sometimes we might talk about grow, but a lot of times it's just Michigan Bros.
The Michigan Bro Show.
Exactly. So just much love, everybody. You know, this is a new year. Just come into it. I've said it a couple of times in private chats and other places, but I just come in here just like you're gonna kick it right in the balls. You know, get the right fucking attitude and just come in hard. And I think good things will happen. At least get a good head of steam, and maybe it'll carry you through at least the first couple months. Anyways,
Happy New Year, Spartan. Peace
Happy
out,
New
dude.
Year's, man. Everybody have a good rest of the show. Chat, I love you. You guys, I love
Happy New
you.
Year.
Just keep growing and fucking protect home grow. God damn it.
Fight for that right. And definitely take this new year strong. Anything to motivate the people, I'm all for it. If it's New Year's or whatever else, if it inspires you to do better personally in your life, in your job, and your grow, whatever it is, I think it's good to try and think about a fresh start. I think every single day could be that way in a sense, but a new year, it's literally 1/1/23. Looking at my watch, seeing it earlier, it's kind of funny. Filling out some paperwork today, and yeah, it's great. I think it's good to have
I want to
goals to
say,
set your mind to. Go ahead, Tal.
I want to say, screw man's law. Go by God's law. It doesn't matter if your plant count is 4. Do whatever you want. That's it.
If you're going to take the Tao approach, and
Yeah, be careful.
I personally think that if the laws are
Emotionally.
unjust certain times, you know, there's a word for it, and I'm blanking on it, but yeah, it's like basically resisting by following your own rule, as long as you're
Civil
not harming others.
disobedience.
Civil
Yeah.
disobedience, yes.
Civil disobedience is the perfect exact term I was thinking of. And I think cannabis is one of those things. And if you're an intelligent person, and you are because you're listening to this show, then you know that in your own home, as long as you are here in the United States, at least, you have a Fourth Amendment right to, not have your home or place illegally searched or seized. So just make sure not to give or grant access to your dwelling if you're growing, like Tao is saying, maybe more than your plant count. And with my grow light, I could literally have 100 plants under it, or I could have 2 plants under it, and it's no different to the electric company, right? So like if they're all in a bunch of solo cups, or if it's in a fucking earth box and I have 2, so just you could do things within your own. But if you're going to do those types of things, don't post them on the fucking internet. Don't fucking convict yourself. I think having an anonymous account, maybe that's not associated with your name or any emails, things like that, if you want help and to interact with the community, or just don't post where you're at. If you're in a state that has a plant count of 6, you can pretend that you're in Canada or something with an ACMPR license to grow 500 or whatever it is. But yeah, definitely not a good idea to incriminate yourself online, even if laws are getting more cannabis friendly. You can hear my cat over here purring. She agrees. She says, happy to be here. I'm happy to be here with you all.
Yeah,
And,
you don't have to show or tell anyone. That would be my advice. Yeah.
Yeah,
you're
be
really
cyber secure.
In a certain spot, yeah, don't show or tell anyone until it's more
especially if you're in like the red states.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
OPSEC.
No, that's definitely good. I think a lot of people, like the newer growers, do it more so for advice, like, hey, what's going on with my plant? Like, I've got these spots and things like that. Or they're like, here's my setup, like any suggestions type thing. I've found, because I have the privilege of being in a green state that's legal, since I started posting, and I was a grower before I started doing a micro grow in my tent in my house. Like I did stuff in the past. So I thought, oh, I'll fucking crush this. But naively, I fucking started up with way too much light, not enough environmental controls. So I struggled. I had fucking issues, and people helped me out along the way. There's a lot of great people that came along and said, maybe move your light up, maybe do this, maybe do that. And, between their feedback and my own experience, I was able to dial it in to now I've got a grow setup that I'm extremely happy with. That's extremely productive for me. And it's a big thanks to a lot of the people out there. I've tried many different cultivation methods. I've fucking gone from cocoa to soil to now like a living soil, and tried pots. Now I'm in an earth box. It's like there's a lot of experimentation that you can do within your own grow. And going back to the whole thing of having your own control and getting to do it yourself and see how it works for you. There's so many ways to do it. I mean, everybody kind of finds a different method. Like I follow 7,500 people, and even the people that follow somebody else and try and like carbon copy like their exact setup, it ends up a little bit different because what they have available to them at the time, the technology at the time, maybe they got a newer light or an older light or whatever it is, but like their budget, their grow space, everything is really, it comes down to you and your setup. And that's one of the beauties of it. And it makes it really individual to you. And I think it shows a little bit of your personality in the grow. And we can all kind of get attached to that and kind of celebrate the individuality. That's one thing. If we're going to talk about the new year going forward, it's good to be individual. If you're in one of those places where you're feeling like you got to try and fit in, maybe it can be good at times. So you make friends, get to be with a family and things like that. But individuality is good. Stand out, have your own thoughts, own opinions, and being different. If you just blindly go with the crowd, history has showed us terrible results come from that. And I've been to a place where one of those terrible things happened. And one of the things that they celebrate now is being individual. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness they've learned from their mistake in the past, I think. And they're trying to celebrate that each individual, we all have worth and we all have something special to us to share with the world, or even just, independently celebrate yourself. And so never forget that. I know it's a new year. A lot of people don't have those positive people out there. A lot of people are stuck in maybe a negative place. Maybe their friends or family aren't as uplifting as these types of communities. So it's good to be reminded sometimes that there's a lot of good in the world, and you can make it even better yourself and try and better your own situation in little ways every day. Make it a little bit better each day, and put that best foot forward. I know this is becoming like a Jack Stone motivational fucking uplifting chat. Welcome to my TED Talk. But no, it's good to be back with everybody. I am probably feeling this way because I was actually a little bit sick the last few weeks, and whenever you're sick, when you get healthy again, I think it's you value and appreciate how much health actually means. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful for the people who kept the show going while I wasn't here, which is all of you and everybody in the chat listening right now.
I'm glad you're feeling better, Jack. And yeah, that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're 100% right. I find that to be pretty true. So, and a lot of people are really the word escapes me. They downplay their abilities and stuff. Everybody. You need to be a little bit egotistical.
They underestimate themselves.
They underestimate their abilities and everything. And I see it all the time. So yeah.
You really have to know your worth. Like, even if like you think about like what you get paid at your job, like, can I be making more for what I'm doing? How much value do you provide to that company, or do you own your own business or whatever it is? Like, oftentimes you're probably getting underpaid. You could probably be getting paid a little bit more. And not that it's all about the money, but you only have so much time. And if you can make a little more, and so you can spend a little more time with your friends and family or loved ones, whoever that is, I think that's a good thing. And
it doesn't hurt to ask for a raise. The worst they could say is no. I tell people, when people come to me, I'm like, just go ask for a raise. A lot of times they get it, and they probably could have gotten it a year ago.
Sooner,
if they would have asked a year ago, yeah, they could have.
Or more if they would have asked for more. And if they do say no, then also take the approach. The best time to look for a job is when you already have one, and you can go look around. And if you get one that says, "Hey, we'll take you, but we'll pay you, $2 an hour more," then you can go back to your job and say, "Hey, they're going to pay me, $3 an hour more. So either you pay me, $3 an hour more to stay here, or I'm going to go with them." And oftentimes, if they think you're worth it, they'll pay you more, and then you can just stay in that same job. But just by going and talking shop a little bit around town, you can show yourself that you have that value. I mean, prove it to yourself. And if you don't, there are skills that you can go learn online. Fucking this show is an example. YouTube is an ability for you. You can go on Zenthanol's YouTube channel and learn everything you need to know about IPM for cannabis for the most part. I mean, like, you could look up all the common pests. If you have one of them while you're growing, you'll be able to go to his pest primer, figure out what it is, figure out how to treat it. And then you can go find a range of things to treat it within your local area. And then once you beat that, that's a notch in your belt. You've got that experience. Now moving forward, you know how to beat that pest. And once you get that first harvest, now you're a quote like real grower. You know, you're there, you've got it, you've done it, you've made it for yourself. You can smoke it, you can turn it into your hash or oil, whatever suits your needs. But yeah, I think that people underestimate their ability to continue learning. You don't have to be in school to learn. You can be self-educated through YouTube or other means. It's like there's a lot of garbage on the internet, admittedly, but if you find a decent source that's having some success and you can replicate that or follow it and take those skills on into your regular life, whether it's for cannabis or other things. I know a lot of people are in the professional cannabis space now, whether they're breeders, growers, even in like advertising, trimmers. My wife works at a delivery service. I mean, there's a lot of space for people to work in the cannabis field. But even if you don't, I think it's a good time to, like Spartan was saying, it's a new year, try and reevaluate things and put our best foot forward, kick the year in the balls. I think he said. When he said that, it made me think of I think Family Guy. They had like this dude like an orange afro, and he's like, "You just got kicked in the nuts, but you're on TV." And they'd like pan over to the camera, and the person would be like, "Ah." And I think that was based off of a real thing. I can't remember if that is actually true, but I thought I used to be able to find videos of somebody actually doing that, but maybe they got pulled off the internet because it's technically assault, and I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it was staged. Prank things though tend to not age well. That's what I've noticed with the internet. With that said, we have 5 minutes left. There's only four of us, but I think we can go around and give our final thoughts and shout out. This has been a little bit of a all around one. We didn't really have a topic. I didn't take any questions. I said that I was going to. I'm sorry, everybody out there. I am just thankful to be back with this crew of amazing people and to talk a little shop and smoke and talk grow and everything else, life, culture, etc. But with that said, I'm gonna kick it over first to Brandon Rust and get his final thoughts and shout outs. Where can the people find you?
Yep. So you can find me on Instagram at rust.brandon and also Bokashi Earthworks, bokashiearthworks.com for all your fertilizers, microbes, amendments. And we're going to be doing a bunch of additional education and a lot more content this year. We're going to be, putting some cool stuff together. So we'll keep everybody posted.
Looking forward to that. And next up, we have Matthew Gates.
Just like Brandon saying, I have a lot of really big plans for 2023 and onward, particularly in the realm of education and making a lot of information free and also sort of high value for people like clients and things like that. Biosecurity is very important. I think we had a lot of really cool topics today about plant health, about genetics, about breeding, and sort of a fusion between technical mastery and sort of theoretical mastery that is often a theme in the way I look at cannabis cultivation in general. So I really liked investigating that with everyone. You can find me for professional inquiries at zenthanol.com for pest issues, for SOP writing, for preventative and curative measures, also as training for that matter. You can also check me out on social media, where I will be posting a lot more on Instagram at SyncAngel and on YouTube, Zenthanol. Also, you can also find me on Twitter at SyncAngel as well. And you'll also be getting a lot more posts and additional benefits this year upcoming for my Patreon. For $1 a month, you can check out my Discord channel. And also, we're probably going to have more regular live streams on my social media too. So you can ask questions there, and I'll post it on YouTube. So collectively, we can all benefit from really good questions that my followers often have. So I look forward to our mutual success.
Looking very much forward to that. And I will say, last and certainly not least of the panelists this evening, the American one.
Jack, Matthew, good to see you both, and everyone that was on panel. And shout out to everyone who wasn't here: Noah the Grower, Aaron, and Dr. MJ, and Pure
Kyle.
Breeding. Yeah. I hope they're all having a good New Year's first day, and Happy New Year to everyone in chat. I'm the American one, the American one _ Keens on the IG. Yeah, you could hit me up on the IG DMs. I get back to you eventually. And yeah, let's make 2023 the best year ever. And yeah, I guess that's about it. Peace, everyone.
Make sure to check out that Violet Beauregard in the future. That's I see Smart Poker growing that over there. And if you want to check out some Amiaces, you go to amiaces.com and that'll forward you over to Dega.garden. And that's where you can check out some Amiaces seeds if they're still in stock. Got to get them while they're hot. You never know. People are loving that Amy. So internationally famous lady over there. and potentially gentlemen if you're trying to find yourself a male, because Amy
Yes,
is
they are
regulars.
right. And you can
And-
hit me up on the IGs too if you are looking for any seed. No worries.
It's all good. It's funny. We were talking earlier about like the people going direct and like Spartan sending cash in the mail. I had one person of like a couple hundred, 50 strains of green. One person's like, I don't do banks. I don't do any of it. Can I send you cash? Like, I'm like, you don't have Venmo, you don't have Cash App, like nothing. Like I offered like 10 different options for them to pay. And they're like, cash only. I'm like, all right, send it to
That's
this
a
address.
smart person, I bet. I bet she is really smart.
I got a lot of respect for this individual. I have a lot of respect for them, and I have a lot of respect for everybody who listens to this show. I really appreciate all of you, genuinely. I've had extremely positive connections with everybody who I've DM'd back and forth with, even the people that I feel like think that they're annoying me because they DM me a lot, and we go back and forth with like really long conversations and ask me tons and tons of questions. I love that. I feel like it makes me a better grower. Feels like it makes me a better person generally. What more well-rounded, trying to answer things, and it broadens my knowledge, and it helps me realize what people are curious about, helps me realize how to fix and address people's problems in a way that they can learn and grow. So I genuinely love and appreciate all the feedback. I watch every show at least once over, and I go through all the comments and afterwards, and I value all of your feedback, and positive, negative, critical, and it really, I try to take it in and keep the show going in a positive direction. And if we're not going in the right path, then I try to course correct. But I think for the most part, most people are pretty happy with the show that we're putting on, and I'm happy showing up doing it every week that I can, and hope to keep doing it for years to come. Yeah, I know on New Year's it's always a good time to evaluate like how are things going, but I think things are going pretty good here generally. I think we've got a pretty solid formula. I think we'll look forward to doing some science episodes in the future, because we've done just like a general hang and sesh. We did a Q&A last week or the week before because we were off for the holiday. But yeah, we've got a few different options for our shows, and the people will keep on coming back, and we keep on getting new people. So something must be going right there. And not to toot our own horn, but it does feel good to confirm that the time that we're putting in is justified, and there are actual people out there that we're helping, because you're DMing me and I'm seeing your gardens. I'm following you on Instagram and all the other social media. So it's been an amazing journey. I'm thankful. Thanksgiving isn't the only time of the year that we can be thankful, and New Year's isn't the only time we should be inspired. So with that said, I'm at Jack Greenstock. If you do want a copy of that book, 50 Strains of Green, I still have some available on paperback. I'll sign it and I'll pack it up and ship it out to you internationally or in the US. You can get it at 50strains.com. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm at Jack Greenstock. My backup account is Jack_Greenstock, which is also my name on Twitter. If you want to email me, if you're not on social media, jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. And I'm also on the, oh, you know what? I'm no longer on Cannabis. They're charging a subscription fee, and I didn't use it enough. So sorry, y'all. I'm not there
Ridiculous.
anymore. I'm out. If you're going to start charging me and there's not a free option, you got to at least give me the free option. Even if I don't show up in your algorithm or whatever, just let me hang, let me linger, let me creep. So sorry for all those Cannabis folks out there that I'll no longer be able to interact with. But if you see a Jack Greenstock on there, you know it's not me, because I'm no longer on there. But with that said, I've dragged it on, rambling. Had a great week. It's been so good being back with you all. I don't want to end it. But with that said, Jack Greenstock signing out. Peace and love. And for Dr. MJ, grows love, everybody.
Those love.
Peace out, y'all. Catch you next week and keep growing.